We're back, section 2 of the user agreements, and we're talking about Facebook's user agreement. And I already covered that in the last one, that some of Facebook's requirements in their own user agreement aren't followed. One account only, must use your real name, no convicted pedophiles. If you sell fraudulent goods or you commit any fraud in their marketplace or selling anything, they will not allow you to sell stuff. And yet those profiles go on and on and on for years, still selling stuff. So they also, got in trouble, $90 million settlement, for showing all your likes, letting somebody access all of your personal information through what you liked, what made you angry, what made you happy, that stuff. So they settled and they added a clause that says you understand that they're going to sell that data. That's it, right? There's no control over, no, we're not going to do that. So that also means when you click an event, they have the right to share that with everybody, not just your friends. They can share that with an analytic company. You like this concert, you think you're going to go. They get to share that. That might not make you comfortable, especially if you are allowing your 14, 15-year-old kid to utilize their app, and your kid and their friends are all clicking, oh yeah, we're going to go to this concert. Might be a little bit iffy there for some parents, I would think, especially, all those mommies on a power trip. You would think that they would be worried about stuff like that, but we'll get back to mommies on a power trip. The truth is their liability is completely limited. You can't really sue them for hardly anything. So these lawsuits that have managed to slip through, their limited, and I mean very limited liability, are few and far between. I mean, it cost them a lot of money, obviously. If they've settled at $1.4 billion, you can imagine what they thought they would end up spending if they went to court. So the reason for that is Section 230. And Section 230 is interesting in itself because it actually comes from a law. I'm not kidding. It comes from a law called the Communications Decency Act of 1996. That's right. The last time the federal government put any limits to what they could do is 1996, and they basically gave them carte blanche. It's almost impossible to sue them. You literally have to dig deep, have a lot of legal eagles, and you got to have a lot of clout. On top of the fact that you are so limited just by the law itself, the bigger issue is that they were going to limit where you can sue them. Yeah. If you want to sue Facebook or Meta or even Google, to be honest, but it's a different location, you have to take them to court in the Northern District of California. Yep. Or you can take them to state court in San Mateo County, California. Oh yeah, that's it. That's the only place. So you have to be able to afford an attorney that actually can file a lawsuit all the way in Northern California, in their home stretch, where all their employees will be in the jury pool. That's right. You can't sue them in your home state. No, darlings. You got to have the money and the clout to sue them on their home turf. Oh, but they can sue you wherever they want. Yeah. That's just their user agreement. And you agreed to it because you want to use their product. You get to use their product for free, though. They like to point that out. And I'm not saying that Facebook has done a lot of wrong. Facebook's done a lot of good. In their own user agreement, they have a lot of limits. They just don't always enforce them, clearly. Could they enforce them, really? I think that's a big question in itself, right? That's one of their arguments, that they can't. I wouldn't necessarily disagree that some of their own stipulations might be a little bit hard for them to do. If 1 out of 4 of the worst of the right-wing clowns are actually pedophiles. When I check them, you got to figure I'm getting into arguments with these guys. That's about probably 1/8 of every right-winger on Facebook is somehow a pedophile. That means they're running multiple accounts too. They're not running just one. And I usually can catch them with a syntax comparison. Yeah, I do way too much effort into this. But again, I wanted to try and figure out how to talk to right-wingers. And when you're talking to the same jerk that just is spewing the same nonsense over and over and over again, it's really hard to have a conversation. So you want to know if they're real or not. How many of you ended up going to the right-wing side because you watched and read all those memes and you really didn't get your information from any legitimate source other than Facebook? Think about it. They're not fulfilling their promise that it's only one accountant and they're all real people. Google, on the other hand, everything is harder with them. It's all separated, right? If you have a Blogger account, that user agreement is separated from their Gmail user agreement and so on and so forth. But the user agreements are all pretty similar. It's all their legalese. Theirs is more difficult to read. And when you do get to their main location, which is, you know, your profile's identity and all of your safety settings and your security settings, if you get to the area where you're asking the help desk, so to speak, where you can read that stuff and you ask the Google AI questions about it, it gets turned around itself. That's not really promising, but that could be a fault with the AI. But Google is learning from Facebook's mistakes, I'm sure, and adding clauses just like Facebook does. The problem that we come into is that basically they're regulating themselves, at least in the United States of America they are. Okay, if you live in Europe, they are not necessarily regulating themselves. And a great example of that is Tumblr. You familiar with Tumblr? Tumblr, again, learning from everybody else's mistakes. Tumblr is a great example of a site that grew as an adult site. Okay, it was supposed to be a blogger site, but what it turned into was mostly porn, an unbelievable amount of porn. And then Tumblr has become kind of like a meet and greet, meet up, make new friends type place instead. But, you know, it still got the reputation for the whole porn thing, whatever, right? And let's be clear, their CEO was accused of sex trafficking and wage theft. So, you know, mommies on a power trip are worried about gay penguins in a kitty book, while the real problem is where they're meeting all their hookups for their swingers parties. Their kids are allowed on that at 13 years old. User agreement says they have to be 13. I've already explained that there's plenty of pedos on Facebook. How many more do you think there are on a site that started basically as a blogger porn and turned into a porn site? How many more do you think are on there, boys and girls? It's mind-boggling, I know. And in the UK and EU, let me be clear, their laws say that Tumblr has to have a 16 user age limit because 16 is the age of consent. Why is ours 13? Mommy's on a power trip, we're looking for real pedophiles, or is that just kind of a joke? Now, here's the thing. I promised you guys these are 10 minutes, right? So we are at our 10-minute limit. And that's a lot to digest. Till next time, think about it. Peace.